Justice by action, by action, by action.
Welcome to the Justice by Action podcast, brought to you by Noble, the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives. My name is Keenan James, and I'll serve as your moderator, your facilitator, your guide through our conversation where we talk about bringing equity in the administration of justice. We're looking at all aspects of the criminal justice system. We're looking at policing. We're looking at courts. We're looking at corrections. We're looking at how we can build better relationships between law enforcement and our communities. Noble was founded in September of 1976, and after 44 years continues to fight the good fight to represent law enforcement and our communities as we build valuable relationships, partnerships, and collaborations that increase public safety. This afternoon, we're going to look at the Law in Your Community, a flagship program of Noble, and how it's making an impact on officers, on youth, and on communities across the country. So what is the Law in Your Community? Well, it's kind of our way of addressing what we call the talk.
In recent times, it has been an unrelenting stream of stories.
Deadly police shootings of two black men.
Police officer charged with opening fire and killing an unarmed former college football player.
Cell phone video seen around the world.
Black men, often unarmed, shot dead by police. It has drawn renewed attention to what has long been called the talk.
Here's an opportunity for you to engage, ask questions, ask the uncomfortable questions.
The need for a meaningful national discussion has inspired workshops like this one run by Noble, the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement.
I'm concerned about the person losing their life because a cop said, I was afraid.
The goal? To have that conversation by allowing families to talk directly to law enforcement.
This can't be the norm. We have some major issues that are not being touched right now.
It's a centuries-old conversation, how one must navigate an often complicated color-conscious nation when you are black.
So we're going to address the talk. We're going to meet with Executive Director of Noble, Mr. Dwayne Crawford, as well as some of our other participants and facilitators of the Law in Your Community program. I'd like to welcome first Director Crawford.
Welcome. Hello. How are you?
I'm doing well. The Law in Your Community, Noble, they're really intertwined, something that started kind of with your tenure as well, bringing it about as we increase. So can you give us a little bit of that motivation when you came to Noble, and what was that motivation behind developing the Law in Your Community?
Absolutely. And again, also give greetings to our listening audience, the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives, and our new national president, Linda Williams. But yes, in 2014, when I joined Noble, we began kind of assessing kind of our programmatic assets and looking to see where we could kind of begin to build and strengthen our brand in the marketplace. And I will take that time, this is a little bit before the death of Michael Brown and Ferguson, Missouri, issues that were related to that. We've been kind of retooling and working with our chapter in Georgia. The Noble chapter in Georgia was working with us, a program we thought could maybe be the kind of the foundation of creating or adapting a program that would work for us. And our goal was, can we find a program that could be community-based, but also could leverage the subject matter expertise of our members through collaboration with our Georgia chapter, and then also our regional. We went to all of our 6 regions and asked them for one person that could work with us on this. And then, of course, our COPS office. So the combination of the Justice COPS office, our regional project managers, as well as the local Georgia chapter, we began then leveraging that subject matter expertise that I mentioned to kind of create and customize a program, which then became the Law in Your Community program. I should also mention that after the death of Michael Brown and the subsequent protests in Ferguson, Missouri, that also accelerated the need to get the program completed. And so through a lot of extra hours and nights and weekends, the organization was able to put together a pilot program. And one of our initial launch points was Ferguson, Missouri.
Awesome. So you mentioned the partnership, and one of those things, it's been about 6 years since Michael Brown's death, just this August. So we were, taking full circle, seeing Michael Brown's death, and most recently national news, George Floyd's death. And others. And so it looks like Noble's partnered with the COPS office. How does that partnership with the COPS office really help propel and promote this program across the country?
Yeah, it's been fantastic. And so we went to the COPS office and basically asked them, could we take an existing grant that Noble had in place, and could we expand that grant to allow us to build a curriculum-based program and basically do more than the scope was asking? credit, they gave us thumbs up on that. And I remember the call I received at that time from Director Ron Davis, who then was director of the cops office. We were kind of in the pilot phase, kind of getting the curriculum put together and work with the cops office. And he basically said to us, how far along were we? And we were asked to literally take kind of a unfinished product, but kind of almost like a beta project or product to Ferguson and present it to the public there. But yes, COPS has been there with us from the inception along your community program. And to be very frank, have been very involved with us as we've tailored the program to meet the needs of our community. And so each year, in cases twice a year, we'll make modifications, but there's been the funding support, but more importantly, the manpower and the brain power from the COPS office that has assisted us.
Sounds like it's been a great relationship between Noble and the COPS office in helping develop that program.
Yes.
What have been the goals for whether it's Noble or the COPS office? What's kind of been the goals and for the community over these years?
Yeah, when we initially began, our goal was, could we impact at least 1,000 young people in a 12-month period? And we listed some metrics. I'm about to read these a little bit. So one of the key metrics is the following. Could we increase their knowledge in their appropriate and positive communication and interactive skills with law enforcement? Could we also help young people develop strategies to address law enforcement personnel when approached during a traffic stop or other similar engagements? Additionally, could we also get the young people and the adults that were going through this kind of training and this interaction, this program, to go back and educate their own peers on the communication skills they learned during our training sessions? And then lastly, could we increase their knowledge of basic federal, state, and local laws? That final component was a key part that came from the field, meaning the Noble members. What could we also do to begin to educate them on key laws that are germane to their local communities, cities, and states?
Well, it sounds like the collaboration with those locals has been key to it as well, which is a great segue as we bring in two of our Noble members who have helped be key facilitators in the Law in Your Community program. James Jefferson is out of our Baton Rouge chapter with the Louisiana State Police, as well as Deputy Chief Tanya Smith with Tallahassee. I want to bring them into our conversation. Mr. Jefferson and Tanya, welcome and thank you all for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
You know, one of the key components to this program is really the Noble members, because you're the ones out there. You're helping bring this program to fruition. It's one thing to put it on paper. It's a whole nother thing to put it in practice and to reach that demographic of 13 to 18-year-olds. So first and foremost, on behalf of all of the members of Noble, thank you for taking that task on, thank you for reaching out to our communities, and thank you for taking on such a noble profession.
Thank you. Thank you.
So
thank you, Mr. King.
I'll start with you, Mr. Jefferson. You know, what does a program look like in action? You know, what is it? What's going on? How do you present to your audience that you may have there? And then I'll go over to Ms. Smith. We'll talk about both. How does it look, feel?
The way that this looks in action is very informative. It's a great way for the young people and police officers to really interact with one another. For us here in Baton Rouge, one of the things that we found successful when delivering this program is the mock traffic stop. And what that consists of is we will pick about 4 students before the program even starts. We'll kind of give them a debrief on exactly what are we going to do. We don't give them too much information because we want this to be as authentic as possible. And so what we do is we, as Noble members, law enforcement people, we conduct a mock traffic stop on 4 random people out of the crowd. And once we go through that traffic stop, it's very interactive. Sometimes it escalates, sometimes it de-escalates. But the unique thing about it is we switch roles, and the youth is able to play the police officer, and we're able to play members of society. And so we have our roles mapped out. So, you know, we kind of turn up a little bit on the kids, but we want to make it as real as possible for them to give some legitimate feedback on the emotions and the heightened emotions that they felt in the midst of that traffic stop. So I'll stop there and turn to Chief Smith. But that's one thing that's been a great success for us here in Baton Rouge.
Chief Smith, I'll let you jump in there. I saw you nod, and it sounds like that traffic stop is something that is key, an element to the program for you as well.
And so we do the exact same thing, too, as well. And I echo the exact same thing. So for us, that is the best part. So you can go through and you can talk through every single thing. And I think the emotion that the people are feeling, this is probably for us and for the kids a lot of times and the adults, because what I think we're missing here is because you know how people say the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. The parents don't know how to act just as much as the kids don't know how to act. So a lot of times what happens is you get that parent interaction as well as the kids. So there is an adult component as well as the kids component. So we like to mix it up for both. But when you do those scenarios with those kids and as well as those adults, because we've had a 65-year-old woman actually pull a gun, because we have pretend guns, and actually shoot one of our police officers. And basically when you ask her why she shot the person, she said, I didn't like the way they looked at me. And we actually have to go through, is that actually a reason why you can shoot somebody? But I love this program because it's phenomenal. The interaction it's phenomenal. It's just phenomenal. So
it sounds like that really is kind of that key element as we titled this particular podcast, Conversations to Avoid Confrontation, which is a part of the mantra for the law in your community. So when you put citizens or community members in that position to say, well, what if you were the officer? What decisions would you make? It sounds like this is a great opportunity to open some avenues of communication with the community as well. So how has that been reception with various communities and law enforcement? I'll start with Chief Smith and then Mr. Jefferson. How has that reception been with local law enforcement that you may have been working with the program?
So for us, I will tell you, I worked for the state agency for a while and then switched over. So I'm back with the local agencies now. So I will tell you, working with the state, it was a little bit different, but it bridges a lot of relationship building, and it's actually a lot better because it gives us the tools. It also lets the community know that we're all human. Police officers, at the end of the day, we all want that whole, the bridge the gap. We need all of us to work together. And when you can get all different law enforcement agencies to come together to give the same message, and that's the purpose of Noble altogether, is to bring everybody to the table. That's the best thing that I actually enjoy, is bringing everybody to the table. So,
Mr. Jefferson, what's kind of been your experience with local law enforcement working with the program?
I would like to speak from the feedback that we've gotten from the community first. You know, it's something very real when you can be authentic and you can be genuine, because the audience feel that. These young people feel that. They can sense when somebody is coming in and putting on a program merely because they have to. And then they can sense when you have somebody there that really cares about the community, the police department, and going forth. So our success here in Baton Rouge, because I work for a state agency, and I definitely understand what Chief Smith is talking about, but I can't allow that to be a barrier because everybody needs this program. State officials, city officials, county officials need this program. This is a shameless plug. This is the best program on the market, put on by some of the best people in law enforcement, period. That's what we hang our hat on. And so it's something very unique when these young people can feel that you're there because your heart is in it and because you care about them, you care about the profession, and that energy is contagious. And so that catches fire, not only for the community, but for the officers that's there. So despite, what organization they're with, what agency, what level of government they with, when you come with that kind of enthusiasm, that kind of passion, that's contagious. And so we've had success in this area merely off of the way that we present it in a manner, and being genuine when we do it, being very honest and having hard conversations.
And I think that's a great point that you raise, is that genuine feeling that comes with that. I think that is also what helps build trust When you're working with an audience and they know that you're there genuinely, you have a genuine concern, you want to have a conversation, and in that conversation, you're not just talking, but you're listening. And with that listen, you're also taking notes and saying, what can we do to change or improve? So it sounds like it's definitely giving us those opportunities as Noble and local law enforcement. And I don't think it's a shameless plug. It's a great program. We encourage as many agencies out there that are watching. If you're interested in the law in your community, we want you to reach out to Noble. We'll provide that contact information. We're definitely looking at the program, what we can do virtually, and we're going to provide more information about that. But as we look at recent incidents and, having a program like this, not in response, but I would say kind of on the front end, how is this can be used as a prevention, but also to help build that foundation. So I asked Mr. Jefferson, looking at those recent incidents regarding George Floyd and others, how would you kind of look at this program to say, here's a great tool to respond to some of those incidents in someone's community, but also to help build that bridge of communication, trust, transparency, and accountability?
Absolutely. Well, what's interesting is that, and I had this conversation with one of the past national presidents of Noble, Cedric Alexander, and I had to ask the question because Mr. Crawford said something in the beginning of his introduction. He said we came to the table in 2014 and we hit the ground running, right? And we've had great success starting in 2014. But it's a 6-year gap between 2014 and 2020 when we see what happened to George Floyd. And for me, I was taken back and I had to ask him the question. I say, have we made any progress at all? Because what I'm seeing now, I have a feeling that we put in a lot of work, but have we really made any progress at all? And this was his response. He said, we can never get lax. We can never get lax. We can never relax. And we need this program now more than ever. And it's very evident that what we did in 2014 was laid the groundwork from 2014 to 2020, and we put in some sweat equity. But don't get lax, because this program is needed. It's needed now more than it was when we thought we was at a tipping point in 2014. Fast forward to 2020, and it's needed now more than ever. So we just have to be diligent and continue to push the message of community policing, transparency, reviewing policy, making sure we check cultures in police departments. It's necessary. And just when you think we've arrived, then bam, it seems like we're hit in the face and knocked back onto the ropes, if you will.
Totally get that one. Chief Smith, as we kind of think about what Mr. Jefferson just said and kind of that impact on the community, how about from law enforcement, those officers that are having those conversations now, hearing from the youth, hey, here's how I feel, here are the emotions that I'm going through. Are we making an impact on law enforcement as well?
Yes, and I would say, and Dwayne and I have talked too, because we're actually getting the requests more so now, because I've had more conversations with communities asking for the law in your community. They're calling, hey, how can we get it? And we're telling them, just wait, the virtual's coming, because they want to have the conversations. And we know we got COVID right now, because we don't want to tell them no, because we know the conversations are needed. They want to have these conversations, and the conversations need to be had. So yeah, we have to continue the conversations. This is absolutely needed. I'm talking to the officers now. Listen, guys, we know that things are going on. You guys have got to do due diligence, and hey, these newer officers that we're having to train, they're used to texting. They're not used to, back in the days. I came in police work in 1990. Where we had to get out the cars and we had to talk. People aren't used to that now. They're used to phones and texting. So it's that re-educating of the officers and retraining. So yeah, we have to go back to old school training. And yes, law enforcement's got to go back. We got to go back to the old school days. So yes, we got some work to do.
We've got work to do, and I think Noble's positioned itself to do that work. Mr. Crawford, I'm going to look to you as we kind of go to close this one out. What would you encourage a chief, sheriff, law enforcement executive? What would you suggest or recommend to them as far as the Law in Your Community program?
I would say one, I look back at those 6 years, and so Mr. Jefferson said that, I was kind of thinking back to Dr. Alexander being our president at the time and my role as executive director. But I think one is, you look back, we were shooting for 1,000 people as our goal in year one. We now average over 10,000 young people and adults a year. But with that being said, the demand is still there. And to be very frank, we haven't only scratched the surface of it. Say to any law enforcement executive, this is an easy plug and play. We've not had one police chief or sheriff ever say no to a request for our program locally. That being said, we want to have as many chiefs and sheriffs and other senior officials that are out there to invite us to come. We don't charge a fee to the community or to the agency. We have the expertise to deliver the content. We just need what? Just to make that request. I'll also say this, that it is a great tool for their agencies to engage in some really tough conversation. But at the same time, a great way to do what? Build these relationships and build goodwill when there isn't a major problem. Meaning there's not a Floyd or a Michael Brown, that you have an opportunity to kind of build that equity in that community. And our program is tried and true and has been supported by almost every law enforcement organization, both at the federal, state, and local levels. So we would encourage them to definitely request a program. And as you all know, because of your great work, we have the soldiers, so to speak, in the field, the boots in the streets, to deliver the program and then customize it based on their needs.
Mr. Crawford, Mr. Jefferson, Chief Smith for joining us this evening to make sure that we had a good, comprehensive conversation about the law in your community. So thank you all very much for joining us this evening.
Thank you, everyone.
So to our Noble family supporters, our members who are looking forward to that virtual option, the Law in Your Community Noble Virtual Edition is coming. We want you to check our website, www.noblenational.org, as we'll be deploying that virtual version here at the beginning of September. It's, again, free of charge. Free of charge. Our goal is to support our law enforcement partners across the country with this program. So whether you're a law enforcement agency, a community association, a church, some other civic organization, we're ready to work with you to bring this message to our communities. We want to build trust. We want to build transparency. We want law enforcement and the community to work collaboratively to address public safety. So the virtual edition of the Law in Your Community will be premiering this September so that you can be right in the comfort of your home or wherever you may be and participate in this very important conversation. Our local law enforcement partners will be engaged as well so that we can have real, practical conversations about what's going on, how to move forward and address things. So the Law in Your Community Virtual Edition is coming. Check the Noble website, or you can always email us at info@noblenational.org, and we'll get back to you with those details. So again, thank you to our guests for joining us. And I want you to look forward to the Law in Your Community. There's a great program looking to build trust and transparency with local law enforcement. My name is Keena James. I'm Deputy Director of Noble. And again, we are Justice by Action.
Justice by Action.
Executive Producer, the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives.